There are places underground where the walls aren't just tight, they're alive, shifting, breaking, waiting. These caves don't warn you, they don't give you a second chance. Today, we're going inside 4 real stories. A tourist who walked into a frozen cave and never walked out. A leader pulled from the dark just as a boulder fell. A diver lost in an underwater maze. And a veteran explorer crushed in a cave that gave no mercy. These aren't just close calls. These are moments when solid rock turned into a trap and crushed everything in its path. Let's begin. In the farthest reaches of Tierra del Fuego, Argentina, lies a cave so beautiful it seems almost unreal. Jimbo Ice Cave. In November 2022, a Brazilian tourist oblivious to the cave's unstable nature ignored the warnings of park rangers. The beauty of Jimbo Ice Cave was simply too tempting. With little concern for the dangers, he entered the cave with a small group, eager to experience the marvel of the glacier up close. They made their way through the winding tunnels, their footsteps crunching against the ice beneath. The deeper they went, the colder it became. The walls of ice pressed in from all sides, casting an almost dreamlike glow across everything in sight. But dreams, as they say, can turn into nightmares in an instant. Without warning, the silence was shattered. A massive slab of ice weighing several tons tore free from the ceiling above. It dropped without mercy, like an executioner's blade, crashing into the ground with a deafening roar. The sound was thunderous, like a freight train smashing through the walls. The whole cave seemed to shake as the ice slab plummeted downward. Time seemed to stop. The air, once still, was now thick with dust and the echo of the falling ice. In a split second, the tourist was struck. The sheer force of the impact pinned him down, and the enormous chunk of ice crushed him under its weight. The sound of cracking ice and the tourist's body being trapped beneath it was the last thing anyone heard. The cave fell silent again, but this time, it was the kind of silence that sends chills down your spine. A silence that spoke of a life cut short by the very thing that made the cave so mesmerizing. The scene was utter chaos. The group stood frozen, staring at the wreckage of what had just happened. The tourist, pinned under the ice, had no chance. The narrow passages made it impossible to reach him in time, and the ice was too thick to break through easily. Every move they made risked further disturbing the fragile surroundings. In that moment, it became clear. The cave had claimed its victim. Rescue efforts began almost immediately, but the challenges were insurmountable. The cave was so unstable that approaching the victim was a dangerous task. The rescuers had to be extremely careful, as another collapse was a real possibility. The ice above them groaned, as if warning that it might drop more at any given moment. Every step toward the fallen tourist was like walking on a knife's edge, and every second was critical. But no matter how many times they tried, the massive block of ice could not be moved. The situation was hopeless. It wasn't just the immediate danger of the ice. The temperature inside the cave was freezing. Exposure to those conditions, even for a short time, can be deadly. The victim was trapped in a tomb of ice, a frozen prison that was impossible to escape from. The beauty of the cave, which once captivated them, had turned into a silent executioner. Hours passed before they were able to retrieve the body, but by then the ice had claimed its final victory. The cave, with all its beauty and terror, had taken another life, an accident that could have been avoided if only the warnings had been heeded. The tragic death of the Brazilian tourist is a brutal reminder of how quickly a seemingly peaceful cave can turn deadly. Jimbo Ice Cave may look like a frozen paradise, but like all caves, it is unforgiving. One wrong step, one careless move, and the beauty of the ice becomes a fatal trap. For anyone venturing into a cave like Jimbo, it's clear, nature does not wait for you to be ready. But while Jimbo Ice Cave's collapse was devastating, it wasn't the only deadly cave incident in recent history. Let's take a look at a chilling incident in New Zealand, where a boulder fell unexpectedly from above. On January 4th, 1960, deep in the New Zealand wilderness, a group of cavers embarked on an expedition that would end in tragedy. They were headed toward Harwoods Hole, one of the deepest and most challenging caves in the country. Harwoods Hole is a vertical shaft that plunges down over 180 meters into the earth. It's a place of awe and fear, a massive hole in the ground that seems to go on forever. The air is damp and heavy, and the only sound is the echo of voices bouncing off the walls. As beautiful as it is, Harwoods Hole is not a place for the faint of heart. The team of cavers, led by Peter Lambert, was well prepared for the descent. Lambert, a skilled and experienced cave explorer, had led many expeditions before. This was just another adventure, but one that would soon take a fatal turn. The plan was to explore the cave's depths and collect important data. The team had already spent hours preparing, gathering gear, and setting up ropes. As they geared up, the atmosphere was tense but excited. They were about to descend into one of the most challenging caves in New Zealand. Lambert and his team made their way to the edge of the shaft. The hole was wide, surrounded by jagged rock faces, and the only way down was to be hauled by rope, a slow but steady process. Lambert, being the leader, was the first to begin the ascent back to the surface after completing their exploration. Everything seemed to be going as planned, but in a split second, disaster struck. As Lambert was being pulled up, something unexpected happened. A massive boulder dislodged from somewhere above came crashing down from the depths of Harwoods' hole. There was no warning, no sound at first, just the sudden impact of the rock slamming into the side of the hole. It fell quickly, like a bullet fired from the darkness, and struck Lambert directly. The boulder hit him with such force that it knocked him from the rope, sending him tumbling into the depths of the cave. The other cavers watched in horror as Lambert disappeared from sight, the boulder now trapped in the narrow space around him. There was no way to predict the timing of the rockfall, no way to prepare for it. It was one of those freak accidents that no one could have foreseen. The rescuers immediately sprang into action, but the cave, with its tight spaces and dangerous terrain, made it almost impossible to retrieve Lambert quickly. The air was thick with dust and the scent of wet rock. The ground beneath them trembled from the force of the boulder's fall. The cavers knew they had to act fast. If Lambert was still alive, they couldn't afford to waste a second. They lowered ropes down into the hole, trying to reach the spot where Lambert had fallen. The space was too tight, the shaft too deep, and every move they made was a gamble. They could hear the distant sound of rocks shifting, the cave's warning signs that things were becoming unstable. With every passing minute, the risk grew. Yet, they pushed on, desperate to save their leader. But the fall had caused more than just physical damage. Lambert had been struck with such force that any chance of survival seemed slim. The rescue efforts turned into a recovery mission, as the reality set in that there was no way out for him. The rescue team struggled for hours to secure a safe way to retrieve his body, but the sheer size and weight of the boulder made it impossible to get close enough. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Lambert's body was recovered. The team was left in shock, mourning the loss of their leader who had been such a critical part of their expeditions. His death marked the first recorded caving fatality in New Zealand, a stark reminder of the dangers lurking beneath the Earth's surface. Harwoods' hole, once a symbol of adventure and exploration, was now forever linked to tragedy. The lesson was clear. No matter how well prepared you are, no matter how experienced you are, danger can strike at any moment. Caving is unpredictable. The very rock you rely on can betray you, and sometimes it's not just the cave itself that poses the greatest danger, but the unpredictable elements of nature that can turn everything upside down. The tragic story of Peter Lambert's death left an indelible mark on the caving community. His bravery, his leadership, and his passion for exploration would never be forgotten, but his death served as a harsh reminder that caving is not a safe pursuit. The cave, as beautiful and exciting as it may be, is a place that demands respect. As tragic as Lambert's fate was, it wasn't the last time nature would take its toll on unsuspecting adventurers. The next story takes us into the depths of the Ressel Cave system. On the afternoon of October 18, 2022, in the remote, hidden corners of France, a lone diver descended into the depths of the Ressel Cave system. Located in the heart of the Marcilhac-sur-Célé region, this cave system is notorious for its treacherous underwater passages, narrow tunnels, and dark, murky waters. It was a place where light barely penetrated, where the only sounds were the bubbles of breathing air and the muffled movements of equipment. The Ressel Cave system, like many others in the world, promised a journey into the unknown, an adventure for those brave enough to navigate its labyrinth of chambers and passages. The water was cold, the air thick with the damp smell of ancient rock, and every tunnel twisted deeper into the earth, beckoning with the challenge of discovery. The cave was not a place for the unprepared, but this particular diver, a seasoned veteran of underwater exploration, was confident in his skills and experience. He had trained for years in some of the world's most difficult cave diving conditions. Solo expeditions were something he had done many times before, each dive pushing the limits of his ability to withstand the dark, confined spaces beneath the earth. But no amount of preparation could have saved him from what would come. As the diver descended deeper into the murky water, he passed through tight tunnels and narrow passages, the darkness enveloping him completely. His light, a small beam in the vastness of the cave, illuminated only a few feet ahead of him. The water felt thick around him, almost suffocating, as if the cave itself was trying to swallow him whole. His movements were slow and deliberate, the weight of his equipment pulling him deeper into the unknown. But the deeper he went, the more isolated he became. The pressure of the water increased, and the narrowness of the tunnels forced him to maneuver with care. There was no turning back now. The further you go into a cave system like Ressel, the more you become a part of it. Its cold, its stillness, its darkness. Then it happened. In an instant, a piece of his equipment, perhaps a tangled hose or a misplaced line, became caught in the rocks. The diver, who had been moving confidently just moments before, was suddenly trapped. His breathing became more frantic, the rhythmic sound of air bubbles now filling the silence of the cave. But there was no escape. The more he pulled, the more tangled he became, trapped in the claustrophobic grip of the rocks. In those desperate moments, the diver's only hope was the very equipment that had failed him. His lights flickered, the cold water pressing against his skin like 1,000 unseen hands. Every movement, every attempt to free himself only seemed to worsen the situation. The water around him felt oppressive, the tunnel narrowing, the rock walls closing in. The diver knew that time was running out. The air in his tank was depleting, his oxygen supply slowly being drained as he struggled against the crushing weight of the cave. His mind raced, his body tired from the fight to break free, but the tight space left him with little room to maneuver. His heart pounded in his chest, the pressure mounting, not just from the water, but from the reality that he was trapped in the cold, unyielding darkness. He had faced difficult dives before, but nothing like this. The isolation of being alone in the deep water with no one to hear his struggle made the situation even worse. The cave, once a challenge to conquer, had turned into a merciless trap. The diver, now running out of time, fought desperately for air, but in the end, the cave consumed him. Hours passed before his body was found. The tightness of the tunnels, combined with the brutal nature of the entanglement, made it nearly impossible for any rescue efforts to reach him in time. By the time the recovery team arrived, it was too late. The diver had succumbed to the very environment he had spent his life exploring. The Ressel Cave, like so many other caves around the world, remained quiet, its water still once again. It had claimed another victim, not with a sudden fall or a rock slide, but with the slow, suffocating pressure of being trapped in a place where every movement only made things worse. The cave had turned against him, and there was no escape. The tragic death of the diver is a stark reminder of the dangers that lurk beneath the surface. Caving isn't just about exploring the beauty of underground passages. It's about navigating a dangerous and unpredictable environment where a single mistake or a sudden failure can lead to a fatal outcome. The isolation, the darkness, and the oppressive weight of the cave are all part of the challenge. But sometimes they are also part of the danger. The story of this diver in Ressel Cave is a haunting reminder of how nature itself can become the deadliest adversary. It's not always the rocks that fall or the walls that close in, but the unseen forces beneath the water, waiting to trap you in their grip. As the diver's tragic fate shows, not all caving dangers come from above. Some of the most terrifying moments come from beneath, where the water's depth and the tightness of the passage are the real killers. The Ressel Cave was more than just a challenge for this diver. It became his tomb. But this wasn't the only time that a cave has turned deadly. Sometimes the real danger comes from the very thing that draws adventurers to explore it in the first place, the unknown. And in March 2024, deep beneath a quiet French village, that unknown struck again. March 10th, 2024. The village of Montvalent in southern France is quiet, peaceful. On the surface, it looks like a postcard. Green hills, calm skies, old stone buildings. But underneath this beauty lies something else. Something cold, dark, and dangerous. The Saint-Georges Cave. This cave system is no ordinary one. It stretches beneath the land like a hidden maze. Winding underwater tunnels, jagged stone walls, tight spaces that squeeze even the most experienced divers. And deep inside, where no sunlight reaches, the water turns pitch black. This is where Patrice Cabanel went. Patrice wasn't new to this. He was an expert diver, a respected name in the world of cave exploration. He had spent decades inside places most people would never dream of entering. He was calm, careful, and always prepared. But even for someone like him, Saint-Georges was a monster. On that day in March, Patrice prepared for a solo dive. He had been planning it for weeks. His equipment was top tier. Oxygen tanks, fins, lights, reels of guideline. Everything was checked and double-checked. His plan was to go deep into one of the less mapped sections of the cave. It was dangerous, but he had done things like this before. He entered the cave through a narrow underwater opening. The water was cold, almost freezing, but he was used to that. As he swam in, the light from the entrance faded behind him. The deeper he went, the darker it got. His flashlight cut through the black water, showing walls of sharp rock and tight crevices. Tiny particles floated in the water, swirling with every movement he made. Patrice followed the line he had laid. In cave diving, that line is your lifeline. It's what helps you find your way back. Without it, it's easy to get lost. The cave twisted in all directions. Sometimes the ceiling was just inches above his tank. Sometimes the floor dropped out beneath him. His bubbles floated up and hit the stone, spreading out like smoke. Farther in, the cave narrowed. The current picked up. It wasn't strong at first, but it was enough to push against him. He adjusted, kicking harder, holding steady. But the deeper he swam, the stronger it got. Unpredictable. That's the thing about Saint-Georges. It changes without warning. Then something went wrong. Maybe it was the current. Maybe it was a shift in the rocks. Maybe his guideline snagged. Nobody knows for sure. But at some point in the dive, Patrice stopped moving forward. His line stopped too. Something had happened. Above the surface, hours passed. People waited. When he didn't return on time, the alarm was raised. Rescue divers were called in. They entered the cave, following his line, tracing every inch of his path. The deeper they went, the more dangerous it became. Then they found him. Patrice was deep in the system, far from the entrance. He was tangled in his own line, near a tight bend in the cave. His body was still. The water around him was calm again, as if nothing had happened. But it had. The exact moment of the accident is still unknown. It's possible that the current dragged his line into a sharp rock, slicing it or catching it tight. Or maybe a narrow passage caused his tank to wedge, pinning him in place. He might have tried to fix the issue, but in the chaos of zero visibility and cold water, things spiral fast. A few seconds of confusion underwater can be fatal. The recovery operation was long and difficult. Divers had to work in shifts, moving slowly through the tight spaces. At any moment, another collapse or snag could happen, but eventually they brought him out. Patrice Cabanel, one of the most experienced cave divers in France, had been defeated by the very environment he had spent years mastering. His death sent a wave through the diving community, not just because of who he was, but because of where it happened. Saint-Georges was already feared. Now it had claimed another life. There's a strange silence in these underwater caves. No wind, no echo, just the sound of your breathing and the endless black water in every direction. You can't see the danger until it's right in front of you, and sometimes not even then. That's what makes cave diving so risky. It doesn't matter how skilled you are. One mistake, one bad turn, and you're trapped in a world that won't forgive you. Patrice's story isn't just about a diver who went too deep. It's about how quickly control can slip away. About how even the most prepared person can be caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. And how the cave, quiet and still, keeps its secrets buried beneath the surface. Caving is thrilling, but these stories prove that it can turn into a nightmare without warning. Crashing ice, falling boulders, twisted gear, and crushing tunnels. Each of these moments ended in tragedy. The tales of Jimbo Cave, Harwoods Hole, Ressel Cave, and Saint-Georges Cave remind us that nature doesn't play fair underground, and when things go wrong, they go wrong fast. If these stories gripped you, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell for more true stories of disasters, survival, and the terrifying power of the unknown. Tell us in the comments which one hit you the hardest, and if you've ever stepped into a cave yourself, we want to hear about it. Until next time, stay curious, stay cautious, and never underestimate the dark.